July 23rd meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law due to the novel 2020 coronavirus outbreak, this meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is physically closed to the public in order to avoid group congregation. There are alternative measures in place for public access. One is through Falmouth Community Television, FCTV. We're live on FCTV right now, and also real-time public comment can be addressed to the zoning board utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. For Zoom login instructions, you can go to www.falmouthmass.us/ZBA. Once you get to that webpage, there is a link for Zoom. You can click that and log on. I'll introduce the board at this time. My name is TJ Hurry. I'm the chairman of the board. Ken Foreman, who is the vice chair, Bob Dugan, who is the board's clerk, Ed Van Kuren, who is a full voting member, and Scott Zielinski, who is a full voting member as well. We have Mary Berry, who is an associate member, and James Morse, who is an associate member as well. Also with us tonight is Noreen Stockman, who is the zoning administrator, Ashley DeMello, who is the recording secretary tonight. Thomas Cox is thankfully with us, helping us from the Falmouth IT department and FCTV as well. The Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with applying the zoning bylaws for the town, and we consider requests for special permits, variances, and appeals as provided in the bylaws, which have been approved by town meeting and the Attorney General's office for the Commonwealth. All decisions that the board makes are made through the public hearing process. The board's goal is to hear testimony from the applicant and also from the public, and to allow a full and fair discussion of the project prior to rendering a decision. To begin each hearing, the clerk will read the public announcement of the hearing and then present any pertinent information from the file, such as referrals from town departments and summarizing correspondences. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then have 15 minutes to make a presentation, and time may be extended by vote of the board. The board will then question the applicant, and the public will be invited to comment as well. And once again, public comment can be provided using the Zoom app, and you can do that at www.falmouthmass.us/ZBA. When utilizing the chat feature, we ask you to please provide your full name and address for the record and any questions, comments, or concerns that you may have about the project. Public comment can include an opinion in favor or in opposition, or it just might simply be a question about the nature of the project. And public comment should only be directed at the project itself. We also ask you to please refrain from making any personal or derogatory statements. The board will then either close or continue the hearing when the board is satisfied that enough information has been presented by testimony and in the file to make a decision by motion and vote of the board. The hearing will be closed. In the alternative, we may continue the hearing to a future date and time. And after a hearing is closed, no more testimony may be taken. As for board discussion and decision, the board may then further discuss a project among ourselves and make a motion to deny or approve would be made and voted upon. The motion will include a summary of key findings and conditions. An affirmative vote of 4 members, which is a supermajority, is required for approvals of motions on special permits, variances, and appeals. A split vote, such as a 3-2 vote, would be a failure to carry and would result in denial. Under Massachusetts general law, if a special permit is denied, the applicant cannot return to the board for 2 years unless the project is substantially different. So turning to our agenda for the night, we have public comment, we have 1 continuation, 2 new hearings, and a few items on our open meeting agenda. So first up is public comment. This period is for anything that is not on the agenda, not relating to any specific questions, comments, or concerns relating to actual projects that are on for tonight. So if anyone out there has anything to say about something not on the agenda, go ahead and type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address for the record. And if anything pops up, we'll certainly read that. We'll go with the continuation that's scheduled for 6:30. We have application 31-20 Ahearn, 27 Fresh River Lane in Falmouth. This application was already opened. We heard testimony on it, and it was continued to tonight's date. And the voting members on this are myself, Ken Foreman, Bob Dugan, Ed Van Kuren, and Scott Zelinski. And do we have, I think is Attorney Ament representing the applicant?
Attorney Clower. And that's Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just for the file, we do have a letter that Attorney Clower did submit on July 15th, just so the board knows, versus some requests that we had. He submitted a revised site plan entitled Site Plan and prepared for Francis X and Christina M. Ahearn, 27 Fresh River Lane, Falmouth, Mass, dated April 13, 2020, with the most recent revision date of July 10th, 2020. We wanted to make sure that we note that this plan has been updated to reflect the removal of the existing split rail fence within the town layout, adding spot grades to the site, and identifying the driveway as asphalt. Also updated the lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking.
All right, thank you, Bob. Attorney Clower.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Mr. Dugan kind of stole my thunder. That was what I was going to lead with. But for the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Abatement Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicants, Francis and Christina Ahearn, the owners of 27 Fresh River Lane. As was noted, this testimony was presented on this, but I think I can be relatively brief and kind of bringing everyone back to up to speed. The applicants are seeking to raise and rebuild the existing non-conforming dwelling on the site at 27 Fresh River Road, Fresh River Lane, I'm sorry, which is located off of Surf Drive behind Bywater Court. This is a lot of just under 10,000 square feet. It's located in residential C zoning district, and it's in an AE12 flood zone. What exists today is a 1.5 story, 4-bedroom structure with a large deck and a shed. The footprint is just shy of 2,000 square feet, and the ridge height is 21 feet. It's non-conforming to front yard setback on 2 sides, to both Fresh River, where it's 19.1, and to Stratford, where it's 22.4, and 25 is required. The existing shed is also non-conforming to both the rear yard and the side yard setbacks. The lot coverage by structure is 20.2, where 20% is allowed by right, and 25 is allowed with a special permit. The applicants have owned this for about 20 years, and they're making upgrades and improvements to it. It's actually becoming their full-time residence. And due to the location in the flood zone, the scope of repairs necessitates elevation to meet the flood zone standards. So they have to raise it to at least elevation 13, 1 foot above the flood zone. What they're proposing is to construct a new dwelling with the habitable space being just about 8 feet above grade. That's where elevation 13 is here. And rather than waste that space underneath, they're going, and to reduce congestion on site, they'll be placing a garage under the structure. A portion of the roof will be decked, and the highest point of the railing will be 22 feet 3 inches, only about a foot higher than currently exists. It will remain 4 bedrooms, and it is on the sewer. The non-conforming shed will be removed, eliminating both the side yard and rear yard non-conformities. The front yard setback to both Fresh River and Stratford will be over 25 feet, eliminating that non-conformity. And the lot coverage by structure, though increasing slightly to 21.2%, with the issuance of a special permit, eliminates that non-conformity. And as was noted since we last met, a revised plan was submitted, which indicated that the split rail fence that is currently in the road layout will be removed, will not remain on site. We updated the plan to show the driveway as being paved, and we updated the lot coverage by structured paving and parking, which will be 27%, which is well below the 40% that's allowed. In the residential C zoning district, lot coverage by structures over 20% does require a special permit under section 240-69E. The board has to consider the size and height of the structure relative to the average size and height of structures in the neighborhood, the effects of shadow, the impacts on views and vistas from public ways, and the effect of nitrogen on coastal embayments. The impact of this project is limited both due to the design and the layout. The height is only marginally increased. Footprint is increased only 90 square feet over what exists today. There's no impact to the views and vistas from public ways. There's no change to shadow. The height remains essentially the same. There's no effect of nitrogen, and it's similar in size to many of the nearby properties. This does represent a significant improvement over what exists at that site today. It will again comply with the flood zone requirements, moving all habitable space and mechanicals out of the flood area. It will not create any new dimensional nonconformities. It will eliminate a number of the existing nonconformities, including front yard, rear yard, side yard setback, and the lot coverage by structure. And it meets the requirements of section 240-216. I think that this is a very significant improvement over the existing dwelling. There are no adverse effects that would overbalance the benefits that I've outlined. For these reasons and for these considerations, I would ask that the board grant the special permit. I'd be happy to address any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Attorney Clower. And I'll just say that if anyone out there has any question, comment, or concern regarding this project, go ahead and type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address, and we will address the issue when the time comes. We'll turn it over to board questions now. Ken, do you have any questions?
I don't. I think it's been well explained.
All right. Bob, anything?
Just one quick question, just because we're going over this again. On the referrals from before, Kevin, Amy Lowell had one in here that said that it appeared that 3 bedrooms were proposed and then 2 floors on the first floor, an office and adjacent room, which are unlabeled, both are less than 70 square feet. So not to be considered bedrooms under Title V. Then she puts no variances required under the flow neutral bylaw because the proposed plan does not involve increasing the number of bedrooms beyond 4. So I know the plans are proposed 4. So is that what we're going on, is the proposed 4?
I think I had counted 4 only because of the bedroom. I think Ms. Lowell's position, I'm sorry, because of the office. Ms. Lowell was saying that that doesn't meet the minimum square footage, so it wouldn't be a bedroom anyways. So I had said it was going to be 4 based only on that. But if they're of the position that it's 3 with 2 smaller rooms, we're perfectly fine with that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Bob. Ed, anything?
No questions at this time.
All right, Scott.
Kevin, is the outdoor rinse station, the outdoor shower, are they tying that into the French drain that's for the downspout drainage, or they're just gonna let it run out?
You know, Mr. Zielinski, you always ask questions that are more technical than I'm familiar with. If the answer should be yes, the answer can be yes.
Huh?
If the answer
Well,
should be
it
yes, the answer can be
just
yes.
makes sense. I didn't know whether it was connected or not. It was a pretty good looking plan. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Scott. And Bob actually addressed a couple of questions that I had regarding those referrals. I am not seeing anything on the webinar chat in terms of public comment. What would be the board's pleasure?
So motion to close.
I'll second
Second
it.
All right, motion to close by Bob and seconded by, I'll give that to Scott. Roll call vote. Ed?
Ed Van Kuren and I.
Ken?
Inform and I.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott?
Scott Zelinski, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So the hearing is closed. How would the board like to proceed?
Motion to approve with conditions.
I'll second it.
All right, motion approved with conditions made by Bob and seconded by Scott for now. Bob, would you like to get us started with findings, please?
Yeah, so 240-69E, 240-216, not more substantially detrimental, increases utilization. Property is in a flood zone AE 12, so the home will be at an elevation 13.
In keeping.
Yeah, in keeping with the area. 4, The current property is non-conforming to setbacks on Fresh River Road, 19.1, Stratford, 22.4, where 25 is required. The new structure will comply to all setbacks. Structure will also be 20.1% for lot coverage, which is just over the 20% by right, but well under the 25% allowed with special permit. Updated plan does reflect the removal of the split rail fence within the town layout. Plan also shows that the shed on the property will be removed. I think we should put that the application shows a 4-bedroom, but due to the referral from wastewater, they're considering it a 3-bedroom home, since the 2 rooms on the first floor, one labeled an office and another one that's unlabeled, appears less than 70 square feet, so would not be considered a bedroom under Title V. Property is served by town sewer. Any increase in bedrooms beyond 4 would need a variance under the flow neutral bylaw. Lot coverage comparison worksheet was supplied and it falls well within the range. We've got a ridge height of 22 feet 3 inches. The space below the home, just for utilization, they can be using that for garage space for parking. And the driveway will be asphalt.
Very good. Conditions?
Well, I guess the first one is to approve it as a 3-bedroom. And again, if they can mention the comment from Amy Lowell. Per plans. The fencing will be moved.
Height, Bob?
Yeah, and yeah, plan, and then the height would be 22 feet 3 inches. The split rail fence shall be removed from the town road layout. The shed will be removed per plan. For conditions regarding referrals, there's just a lot of conditions on the engineering, but I would include all of the engineering suggestions for conditions, including section 99.1, affixing of legible numbers. There's also a Concom order of conditions, so they'd have to comply with anything with Concom. And then unless anyone can think of anything else.
It looks like there's plenty of room on site for construction work and vehicles. Being on that corner.
Yeah, I mean, it sits in an easy enough way. They should be able to fit everything on site, but we could just condition that all construction vehicles and materials be kept on site.
Hours, regular work hours.
So we'll do the normal ones, which is Noreen, refresh me, at 7 to 7, Monday through Saturday, and then no hours on Sundays or holidays.
Yes.
I'm good.
All right, very good. Last call for either findings or conditions. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right, so the motion to approve with findings was made by Bob and seconded by Scott. We'll do a roll call vote. Ken?
Inform and I.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Ted?
Ed Van Kuren, I.
Scott?
Scott Zelinski, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So the project passes unanimously with conditions.
Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your time on this.
Thank you. All right, up next, we have application 37-20 Fiera, 10 Terry Lou Ave in East Falmouth.
So application number 37-20, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under section 11 of chapter 40A of the Mass General Laws, You're hereby notified that Marie A. Ferrera of East Falmouth, Mass. has applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to sections 240-3C of the Code of Falmouth to construct an addition to the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling on subject property known as 10 Terry Lou Avenue, East Falmouth, Mass. For referrals, Water Department, plan shows a contiguous structure addition. No new water service shown or required. Planning, no comment. Conservation has no comment for this proposal as property is located outside of conservation jurisdiction. Engineering, one application was reviewed for impacts to public rights of way and public utilities. Terry Lou Ave is a private right of way in this area. Two, any connections or alterations to public utilities would require permission from the appropriate town department. Three, the project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights of way. And four, we recommend the board add a condition that requires the addition of dry wells or stormwater infiltration measures for the new roof area at a minimum. Assessors Department, no comment. Fire Department, the Fire Department has no issues with this project as drawn. Health Department, they would prefer to see it more open to the main portion of the house as its current configuration could work as a bedroom. And the chairman may want to ask about staking. There is a letter in the file that came from the office back on the 21st. That there was no staking as to where the addition was to be constructed. And they had received a notice along with the abutters list regarding this. Any staking done is supposed to be done 1 week prior to the hearing, as that's when the board does its visits. And that's all we have right now.
And who do we have as a representative for the project?
Colin Young, Green Island Homes.
Okay, Thomas, if you could elevate him, please. Great, Mr. Young, you with us? Looks like you are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We
Okay.
can. Before you begin, if you could just address the issue of staking the property. It appears that it wasn't done prior to the hearing.
Yeah, we that was I mean I got the notice. I didn't see that part of it, and I'm not I wasn't aware that that it wasn't done. We did do it a couple days ago, but as an oversight on my part.
No worries. So you can certainly go ahead and make your presentation to the board, but we'll see how the board feels afterwards. We may want to see the property staked before coming to a decision, but again, we'll just let the board talk about that at the end. So
Okay.
feel free to start whenever you can.
Okay. Well, I wish I could be as eloquent as the attorney that presented before us, but it is a pre-existing non-conforming. Basically, the addition is a very small, less than 300 square foot addition to make space for the. I have the owner right here, the daughter-in-law. Daughter. So it does not interfere with any of the setbacks or any of the parts of the pre-existing non-conforming that made it pre-existing non-conforming. Let's see, the concerns that the health department had about the bedroom we've addressed. We talked to them and they suggested that we take out a door, a 3-foot door, and make it into a 4-foot opening with a casement, which we did. and sent in the architect sent in the updated plans. So, I mean, other than that, it's so like I said, it's a small addition to. It's not going to change anything about bedrooms or space. It's just to make more room for the family that lives there.
And since COVID, I have been working from home. So this would provide an area where I can work in an office and leave my computer set up. And it's just a very small area that we've kind of outgrown the small house, and now we're looking to stretch a little bit further. That's all.
Well, the other thing is that it has increased from 15% to 17%, still well below the max allowed for structure. And for structures, paving and parking, it went from 35 to 37%, which was below the 40% allowable.
Very good. I'd like to turn it to board questions then, if you're all set with the presentation.
Okay.
Great. And also, if there's anyone out there who has any questions, comments, concerns regarding this project, type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address, and we will address it when the time comes. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but the voting members on this are the regular voting members, and we will turn it to board questions. Ken, do you have anything?
Not at this time.
All right. Ed?
No questions at this time.
Bob?
Yes, on the, so it shows on the building layout plan that your patio actually encroaches onto the neighboring property. So are you gonna be removing that section?
Yes. Yes, we would do that.
And my other question would be, in one of the prior decisions, I noticed there was a couple. There was one that required a deed restriction be filed with the registry. Was that done?
It was.
So at the next meeting, or if you have it, we just don't have one in the file. If it's possible for you to send us a copy of that.
Okay. I can email it.
Yeah, we can mail it to the administrator for the board. My only comment would be, I would expect that we would do a continuation, only because when I did arrive today, there was stakes in, but the stakes weren't actually labeled. So usually when we go there, it gives us a better idea what it is. So I know that some of the members had gone up before where there were no stakes. There has been some, but they just need to be labeled. That's all I have right now.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Scott, anything?
Yeah, in some of the prior decisions, there was some reference to a separate, semi-separate residence. Is this a single-family dwelling?
It is. I live there with my daughter and her family.
Okay. And there's, because there was mention of like an in-law apartment or, is that in existence? And I'm a little.
No, it's a master suite. That's my area, is a master suite that was approved, and I live with my daughter and her family.
Okay, so can you explain the amenities in the master suite to me?
Yeah, I have a bedroom and a living area.
Okay. And on the second handwritten page of the proposed, it says open to below. What does that mean?
Honestly, I looked at that. I don't know what that means. Open to below doesn't make sense to me. We have three bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom, and my master suite is downstairs.
Okay. All righty. And then in the new addition, there is a laundry.
Yes.
Where's the existing laundry now? Are you guys moving it, or are you gonna have to?
No, we're gonna move it because it's in a very tight area at the bottom of the stairway going upstairs. So we need a little more space.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Mary, anything?
No comments.
James?
I have no question. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And I don't see anything in the webinar chat as far as public comment goes.
Mr. Chairman, I do just have a follow-up question on what Scott asked about on the plan where it says open to below. So on
Go
that
ahead.
addition, on the addition that's at the back of the house, So is there a second floor in that addition, or is that open all the way to the roof line?
The new addition, there will be no second floor.
No, I mean, so the one that currently exists, I guess, towards the back of the property, on the plan we have that says open to below, is that portion that's already there, is that open all the way to the roof line, or is there actually a second floor in that section?
There's a second floor.
There is a second floor.
Okay,
That's
so
what-
we would, yeah, so we would need on an updated plan that shows what's actually in that section.
You're talking about the original house?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Was the original house all the way to the back of the lot? The furthest?
Yes.
Yeah, so that original section, is that,
So that
that-
is only one story with a small loft.
okay, so what is there, a stairway that just leads to that loft?
Yes.
All right,
And
so
it's
on
a
the
very
plans,
narrow loft.
so on the plans that were filed, the handwritten ones, they just need to update that to show that there is something on that. There's a loft or something on that second floor. That's the section that says open to below, so that might be where the confusion's coming in.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying that, Bob. Anything else from the board? All right. So I think we might be looking at a continuation again, just to make sure that staking is in place and that it's labeled properly, and to update the plans. But I agree, it is a modest project. Does the board have any serious concerns at all that needs to be addressed, or?
No, I don't have any, I don't have
No.
any concerns.
Okay,
No, just so what you said, we just need an updated plan because we don't know, because there's nothing showing on that second floor in that back section, which is the original, we don't know if any of those would be considered any other kind of room by the, everyone that's reviewed the plan has reviewed that as one big open room. So when they do a update showing what's actually in that section, we should send that plan back to the same departments, just because it's something they didn't review before.
Okay. We'll clarify it for the next meeting.
great. And Noreen, I'll defer to you in terms of the next date. I know
So
the next
our
meeting is August 20th, but I'm not
Yes.
sure how that looks in terms of scheduling.
Yeah, I would think that if you want to add this on to that night, it would be relatively quick.
All right,
So motion to continue to August 20th,
Second,
right here on
Motion.
Zoom.
right here on Zoom Town Hall. All right, so the motion was made by Ken to continue the hearing to August 20th. That's our next available date. Second was by, I think, Ed. We'll do a roll call vote again. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Ben,
And Foreman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. Mr. Young, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have application, actually, Bob, can you help me? Because I have the same application number twice here.
Okay, so this is gonna be application 38. Oh, so it's application 3820,
3820, okay. Application 3820,
and it's
Uh,
Junkara, Cornell
Jun-
Way, and McCoy.
very good. I was gonna say, I was gonna try to pronounce it, but my apologies if I got it wrong. Junkara, 11 Cornell Way in Wacoit.
Yep, and the agent will be Laura Moynihan. So application number 3820, being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 48 of the Mass General Laws, you are hereby notified that Zhao L. Junkara and Christina B. Junkara of Wacoit, Mass. have applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit pursuant to Sections 240-23G1B of the Code of Falmouth to construct a garage for more than 2 cars on subject property known as 11 Cornell Way, Wacoit, Mass. for referrals. From engineering, this application was reviewed for impacts of public rights of way and public utilities. Cornell Way is a public right of way in this area. The proposed work in Cornell Way will require filing a driveway permit with the engineering division. What is shown on the plan would not be approved. However, the required revisions are within the right of way and would have no impacts on lot coverage or site design on the lot. No apron is shown, and it appears that the opening may be greater than the 24-foot wide maximum allowed. We request that the board either require the applicant to obtain an approved driveway permit from the engineering division prior to closing the hearing of the special permit, or that the board include the following condition if the special permit is approved. The applicant shall obtain an approved driveway permit and post any required bond with the engineering division prior to start of construction. The applicant shall complete the work as approved by the engineering division in the driveway permit. They do have a comment that says that they have addressed some of this. The revised plan does show a paved apron with a maximum width of 24 feet. So we request that the recommended condition be included in the approval. Any connections or alterations to public utilities will require permission from the appropriate town department. The project must not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or rights of way. We recommend that the board add a condition that requires the addition of dry wells or stormwater measures, but they did address that comment, and the revised plans do show a dry well for the barn. Water department project appears to be a barn with no water service or need and no impact to the water system. Fire department does not have any issues with the project as drawn. Assessors has no comment. Planning board has no comment. There were 5 letters also submitted, and those had no objections to the plan.
Good. And the voting members on this project are the regular voting members. And again, if anyone out there has a question, comment, or a concern, you can type it into the webinar chat using your full name and address. We will address it when the time comes. Attorney Moynihan.
Good evening, everybody. I'm representing the applicant tonight. I'm going to share my screen, if I may, and show you some plans. Okay, so this is an application for garage space for more than 2 cars. The zoning district is residential A. The lot is close to an acre at 40,651 square feet. The lot coverage with the proposed garage is 13.65% with structures, which is under the allowed of 20%. Setbacks are well in excess of the required setbacks under the bylaw, and the height is conforming at under 22 feet. This is the site plan which you have. So Cornell Way is in Wacoit, has a cul-de-sac at the end. This is the subject property here, and the garage with the 3 garage bays shown on the plan. The apron was revised here, coming into the garage at the request of the engineering department, and the dry wells were added to the plan in this area here. This is the elevation that you have in your file showing the 3 bays for the garage. The footprint, very basic, just a box storage garage, basically. This is the GIS map, just showing the subject property in the dark area here off Cornell Way. The applicant took some time and went to his neighbors and abutters to show them the plans and asked them to sign letters if they had no objection to the project. So these check marks represent the letters that you have in your file from these neighbors surrounding the site. But you can see from the GIS map, it's a fairly large lot. There's plenty of room in this area for the garage as proposed. And this is an aerial photo. This is the home here, Cornell Way with the cul-de-sac. And then you have this very well wooded area in here as a wooded buffer for this site. So that's what I have to show you. Let's see, I don't want to get back to my full screen. This is for residential use only. And sorry, I'm just, there I am, okay. The garage is for residential use only. The family has cars that they like to store in the garage and use it for residential purposes, accessory to their home. So other than that, the bylaw requires a special permit, as you know, for the garage. I think that we can show that the standards of 240, 216 are met here, particularly with, no objections from the abutters and views and vistas. There's no impact on septic, there's no impact on affordable housing, and the structure meets the criteria of the bylaw. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have and ask your vote for approval of the garage.
Thank you, Attorney Moynihan. And once again, if anyone out there has any question, comment, concern, use the webinar chat. Use your full name and address, and we will get to it shortly. Forward question, Ken, anything?
Yeah, I have a couple of short ones. Is this heated at all?
You have the applicant should be here as well as the engineer. If they could maybe be called up, I might be able to answer that question.
If the owner is indicating in the webinar chat that it will be heated.
Perfect, thank you.
And also, I guess I was wondering if there's any plumbing in the garage.
There's Joe there.
Good evening. Thank you, members for the board, for take the time to view my application. João Junqueira and Christine Junqueira is my wife. We just want to have a storage for cars, and we have a boat, cars, and we like to storage. It will be heat, but no plumbing at all.
Thank you, Joe.
So it will be heated, but there's no plumbing.
No plumbing. It's just we're going to have molding heaters.
Gotcha. And so then the last question I had is there any kind of storage loft, or is it just open?
No, just an open. Three cars garage. We have a big boat we're going to put in the middle and the cars on the side.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ed, any questions?
Yeah, there's a shed on the site off to the left. Is that going to stay there, or is that going away?
The shed going to
It's
go
not on the drawing.
Yeah, the shed is on a way to the driveway. The shed, we give the shed to one of family members. So after that, after the garage, we don't need a shed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
All right, Scott, anything?
Yeah, on the clear span structure on the trusses, are those or wood?
Can you ask again, Scott, please?
On the clear span trusses.
Yeah, they're 42 feet wide. So they're called the Caesar truss. The middle of the truss has a little the Caesars because the boat hides the garage door.
Right,
So
right.
that's where the boat get in. They're just the
No,
40,
no, no, I understand. It's a nice plan. Are the trusses made out of wood or steel?
wood.
Okay,
Yeah,
All right.
everything's wood.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Mary, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, Mary. James, anything?
No question.
Thank you, James. And I am not seeing anything in the webinar chat as far as public comment goes. Board heard everything that we need to hear regarding this project?
Chairman, I make a motion to close.
Second,
Second,
All right, motion to close by Scott and seconded by Ken. Roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Ken,
Ken Forman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So the hearing is closed. Will the board like to proceed?
Motion to approve with conditions.
I'll second it.
All right, motion to approve with conditions made by Bob and seconded by Scott. Findings?
So 240-23 G1B, 240-216, property is residential A. They'll be building a detached 3-bay garage for storage use only, cars and boats. The building will have heat, but there will be no plumbing. It's a large size lot, 40,651 square feet. And is it well wooded, which, will give privacy to the structure. Applicant did also meet with their surrounding neighbors to explain the project and did receive support as in the file from the surrounding neighbors.
There are no other nonconformities.
No.
Yeah.
And the property's beautiful. I mean, it's very well kept.
All right, anything else for findings?
Height of garage is 22 feet.
This
And the lot coverage
shed
is
is gonna
only,
be removed.
and the lot coverage is only 13.65 and the overall 23.6. Well within both of the allowances.
All right. Conditions?
Per plans, applicant shall obtain an approved driveway permit and post any required bond with the engineering division prior to start of construction. And the applicant shall complete the work as approved by the engineering division in the driveway permit. There shall be no habitable space in the garage. It's for storage use. There will be heat, but no plumbing. And there's no need to condition dry wells. They've already added it to the plan.
Yeah.
All right, anything else
Condition,
for?
They remove it, they put a condition that they remove the shed.
The shed's
we
already
could-
in the layout.
Yeah,
They
we
have
could,
to
but
remove it to build the shed.
they're so under in the lot coverage anyways, that even if they had the shed there, you could put a shed on the property if you wanted to.
I agree.
All right, anything else for findings or conditions?
That's all I got.
All right. So that was a motion in favor of the project with conditions. It was made by Bob and seconded by Scott. Roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Ken,
Ken Forman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott,
Scott Zelinski, aye.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So the project passes unanimously with conditions. Attorney Moynihan, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
All right, so that actually does it for our public hearings. We do have items on our open meeting list. We have first voting the minutes of July 2nd and July 9th. We can take them one at
We're
a time.
tabling the 9th.
Tabling the 9th, I figured.
And
July
I reviewed
2nd.
I reviewed them and they look okay.
Very good. Any
Make
other
a motion
changes?
to accept them. No,
All right, motion to accept the minutes of July 2nd. That was made by I'm sorry, Ed, anyone else?
Second,
Seconded by Ken. Roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, I.
James,
James Morside.
Ken,
Ken Forman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Scott? Oh, muted Scott, sorry.
Scott Zelinski, aye. Sorry about that.
No worries. Mary?
Mary Berry I.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So those minutes are passed unanimously. We are tabling the July 9th minutes on to item number 2, 6-19 Locust Field LLC. It is a request for an insubstantial change to previously approved plans. And Scott Zelinski will be recusing himself from this vote. So I'll appoint Mary Berry as a voting member on this. Noreen, do we have anything?
Yes, so we have a letter from Laura Moynihan dated July 10th, 2020. And she was indicating to the board that the architectural plans that were presented and approved to the board for the Locust Field 40B development were correct. However, the individual plot plans that were drawn up for the building permit were slightly off from the architectural plans. So they are looking to have the dimensions corrected on the plot plan to match the architectural plans. So there's no change to the architectural plans that you saw and approved. The request is just to accept the corrected plot plan to show the proper dimensions to match the architectural plans. So the architectural plans showed a house that was dimensioned 26 by 34. The plot plan showed 34 by 24, so it was off by 2 feet in depth. The garage was shown on the architectural plans as 15 feet by 22. The site plan had it listed as 16 feet wide by 22 feet deep. So it's really a minor modification, but in order to also compensate for any change, they're reducing the rear deck that was 12 by 16 to 12 by 12. So this is before you as essentially an insubstantial change for the 40B development.
So I just have a question. So on the architecturals, on the 26 by 34 and the plot shows 24-34. So which is the correct one, the 24?
So the 26 by 34 is correct. And what
But the
happened
plot
is
was lower.
the plot plan that they submitted for the building permit was incorrect. It didn't match.
Okay, so that was 2 feet less, and then on the other one it was 1 foot more.
Right, so the garage is supposed to be only 15 feet wide. Their plot plan had it as 16 feet wide.
So they're reducing the deck on the ones with because of the garage.
So
change, right?
all correct. So all the decks are going to be reduced to 12 by 12s in order to compensate for the slight difference.
So do we know, so have building permits been issued on these yet?
So there have been building permits, I understand, issued for a couple of the houses already.
And was this caught in the building department where they found an error when they reviewed our plans, or was this caught here?
I'm not sure. There was some discrepancy. We were presented the plans here at the zoning office, and we did notice that there were some changes that needed to be made for the plot plans. We did get the changes submitted to us, but the building permit had already been issued. So we did have corrected plans here but we had not checked those plans prior to sign off on the building permits.
So I just understand what the procedure is usually, just to make sure I'm not wrong. So when we submit, when our decisions are done and our decisions are based on the plans, the developer then submits the plans that we base our decisions on to the building department. When the building department gives out the permits, aren't they supposed to look at what plans were submitted to make sure that there isn't an error on them, or is that something that happens after the fact?
No, so the plans should be reviewed, and typically the plans come up to our office as essentially a double check, so that we check to make sure that dimensions match, we check conditions, etc. And, I'm not sure how the circumstance occurred that the plans came to our office and then they were going to be revised, but we did not get that final sign off sent to us for the initial couple of houses.
So just procedural again on just how this works. So once that goes to the building department, do they normally have to come here and get a sign off before they're allowed to give out a permit, or do they give a permit first?
Yeah, so typically the zoning board does review the building permit card, and we look at our plans compared to the plans that are submitted to the building department to ensure that they do match.
So in this case, it just somehow was missed. So it went to building first, they gave the permit, and then they came here for the sign off, and you couldn't give the sign off?
Right, so we got the corrected plans, but the couple of building permits had already been issued. But I think because all these houses are all the same, they obviously want to update the plans so that they are correct, because these final plot plans will be, part of the permanent record. So you want to make sure that they are correct.
I just want to make sure that, because we do so many permits, and if the procedure is in general that the sign off comes here before the building permits are issued. And I know this could have been an error or something that messes up, but I just want to make sure that the building department understands that prior to giving out a permit, they should be getting the sign off here first. And that way that if an issue like this comes up in advance, they can handle it before the permits go out.
Yep, no, that makes sense, and I will check back with them on that.
Thank you.
Good point, Bob. Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, there was one other, probably a minor issue. We did have a comment or a condition in our decision that discussed the construction of the water line. And while that's not typically within the zoning board's purview, we did put a note to that effect in the file. That being said, we had wording in the condition that said prior to the issuance of building permits that the applicant was to do work on the water line, conduct a hydrant flow test, etc. And I understand from the building commissioner today that that type of work is typically done prior to a certificate of occupancy versus prior to the issuance of the actual building permit. So I don't know if you would like for me to just correct that language, or whether it's sufficient to understand that as part of the building process, that would typically be the way things are done.
Yep, Ken, you're
Can
muted.
you
again.
remind us which
So this would be,
which provision in the decision that was what number?
yeah, so this was condition number 6. And basically this is the third sentence. It says, prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall conduct a hydrant flow test, etc., to provide the results to the water superintendent and fire chief. And now, while the water superintendent and fire chief will still be reviewing this for to make sure it meets their specifications, it's apparently not something that needs to be done prior to the issuance of a building permit itself. So I didn't know if you wanted me to adjust that or or
Can,
not.
can you remind me, because again, the hearing was way back, and I know I think we put that in there for a specific reason, and I thought it had something to do with comments from the water department.
It did.
Right, well-
It was because they didn't want to have a dead end water line there, right? So,
Right, so there is a separate condition above that discusses the water main and the fact that they would like it to be looped and not dead-ended. So there are separate conditions relating to that. But this was, and typically I do have the DPW check the language of these because that's their area of specialty and not mine. So it may just have been an oversight that the language should probably have said certificate of occupancy as opposed to building permit.
So because this permit's already issued and they haven't asked for that change right now, can we inquire into the department specifically what their concern was prior to changing something like that? And my other question is, I guess just a comment, even though that's in there, if it may not be something that's normally done with the building department, we never had comment from the building department when we were reviewing the project regarding that item. And if that item is in the decision and says that has to be done prior to issuing a building permit, I question again, why was the building permits issued without saying you need to correct this first? Because, you know, again, these are 40B developments or any large development. They're affecting all the houses in the area, all the houses in the development. And, you know, I know it again could be an oversight, but an oversight like that affects all the permits and affects things down the road. If you hadn't caught something like that now, bringing up with us tonight, we may not have even, you know, been relying on that issue. So I think we really need to stress when our decisions, I know when our decisions come through, they're fully filed with the building department. And I know the building department is under a lot of, you know, high-end demand down there and they have a lot of things done. But if they don't have the time to look it over, maybe they could, you know, have one specific person in the department that makes sure that these conditions in the decision from your actual permit have all been met prior to them giving out a building permit. And if they hadn't and they needed to change like that to us, you know, you can easily get it on our open meeting agenda for something minor. I just, you know, it's great that you find something like this, but it really isn't our job once we do our conditions to have to worry that the conditions just aren't being considered, you know, when this permitting process comes out.
Well, I think the water department is also one of the sign-offs for building permits. So I suspect that they probably looked at what was proposed, and as long as it met what they needed, they would sign off. So the fact that the hydrant flow test, et cetera, needs to be done, you know, I'm sure that they will ensure that that happens. And I'm sure.
I'm sure that they will. I again, my issue is it's a condition of the permit. So if they looked and thought it wasn't an issue, we correct it and then they issue the permit. But it's a problem if you have special permits that aren't caught and then a project goes on. And if any of our conditions aren't enforced, you know, if things are up 10 years, we know what happens. They stay.
Right.
So if the water, my guess is if the water department knew they didn't have an issue, but it's in the permit, it would have been easy enough to change. You know, do we get a lot of these in? I mean, you have to check these you know, you have to sign off on a lot that comes up here. How often does something like this come up on a basis that our conditions haven't been met and permits have gone out? Is it, you know, once in a while, or is it's frequent? Because if it is, then we just have to figure out how to change the procedure, you know, to make sure that things are followed.
Right.
This is like asking for permission, forgiveness rather than permission. And we put that in there because of the concerns expressed. I think we wanted to be sure that before there was any building, that there was adequate water pressure. I don't think it was an accident or an oversight.
Well, I can certainly check back with the water department, the water superintendent, and inquire about that.
And Attorney Moynihan wrote in the chat that she represents the applicant actually on this issue and would like to comment on these issues. I know typically we don't allow testimony or anything during this, but how does the board feel?
Well, before she comments, can I ask one other question?
Go right ahead, Ken.
So I just was wondering, with these changes, these insubstantial changes, does it change net lot coverage on these lots?
So it's my understanding that with the dimensional correction that was made on the plot plan, including the reduction of the size of the deck, that would then bring the lot coverage back to the same number that it was approved at.
Okay.
And at least as far as 40Bs go, with insubstantial changes, they're generally reduction in housing units, decrease of less than 10% of the floor area, change in bedroom count no more than 10%, change in the color or style of materials to be used, or a change in financing program to be used. So those are just some examples of insubstantial changes.
So when we approve these
Mr.
changes,
Chairman?
the correct,
Who was that? I couldn't tell.
I think
Was
it's
that
Ed.
Ed?
This is it.
That's
Sure,
it.
go ahead,
I
Ed.
think
Sorry.
this is the one where we, this is the one where we asked to have the water main continued out through underneath the power lines out to toward the high school, I believe, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes.
That
So
is the
question
project.
So I would think that ought to be all put in before you start issuing building permits. That's a question
I
for the
agree.
water department. They want to,
Would we like to hear from Attorney Moynihan regarding the issue?
Could I just ask one more question first?
I think it's very clear in the, I think it's very clear in the, that the pipe goes out and then who provides the fittings and all that. All that was in the findings, the conditions, I think. I don't have it in front of me, but.
So on condition number 5, we did discuss the extension of the water main to the westerly lot line where it meets the town-owned parcel. And it was listed that
Right.
that extension was prior to the commencement of phase 2 of the development. And it was contingent on an easement being secured in order to run the water line through the easement.
So I just a question to the administrator. So, you know, I assume we will approve the changes so the plans will match because you need to have them to match. Do we have to put any comments, anything else in there that shows that once that changes, they will have to meet compliance with lot coverage, et cetera, that was in the original decision? Or that will allow it to meet those criteria?
Right, so the lot coverage will match what was approved.
Okay.
This change that is being submitted is just to ensure that the dimensions of the plot plan match the dimensions of the architectural plans, which were what you saw and approved.
So phase 2, can you, I don't recall, are they talking about building half the buildings in phase 1 and half in phase 2?
Well, that's what's interesting is I'm not sure what exactly. I know we have multiple building permit applications in our office currently for sign off. I rather get the impression that it's not specifically being phased, that they're sort of doing a rolling construction. So
there must have been a proposal for phasing, or we wouldn't have had that language in there.
Right.
So, I mean, I was wondering about fixing the condition by saying prior to the issuance of building permits for phase 2, a hydrant test shall be performed.
Yeah, I think before making a specific change like that, I would check with the water superintendent to make sure that I'm not misstating something.
Right. I just think condition 5 and condition 6 should be consistent with each
Right.
other. So you could say, you know, prior to the issuance of occupancy permit and any building permits for phase 2 construction. That would make it consistent.
Yeah, I think the question here is what specifically phase 2 is. I mean, I would need to look back at the plans. I know that they are proposing a total of 12 units. And like I said, I think we perhaps collectively have permit applications for maybe half of the houses at this point in time.
So do you know how many, you know, I know there's 12, do you know how many of the building permits have been issued so far?
I think my recollection was 4.
Okay. I mean, I don't.
Has the water main been started?
I am not sure what the status is with the water main. I have been in touch with the water superintendent because there was an inquiry somewhere along the way, and he did indicate to me that he was satisfied with the current progress. So I'm guessing he's been keeping an eye on things.
Yeah. So this is a suggestion. I guess I would suggest that we go forward tonight with the changes to those 2 plans so that they're consistent. We hold off on any other changes. Number one, nothing else has been requested at this point. And then maybe through you or the chairman, make note to the building department that there are conditions specific to our permit that is currently filed for this project. And they need to follow those conditions as in the permit. And if they do want to do building permits and issue building permits and none of those have been met, then they have to come back here to have us modify the conditions. It's just a little, I mean, it's a little troubling, and I know that, you know, his counsel's here tonight. I don't even know if we need to get to that because we're only being asked for 2 items. We're being asked for a change on the plan so the architectural meets the plots. You know, we're asking other questions tonight because those building permits had been issued without complying to our other conditions. So I think we need to vote on the change and then figure out how to notify the building department or what our next process is at this point to make sure that all the conditions in our registered decision are being followed by the town departments. And if they're not, they either have to come back here for a modification or we have to figure out, you know, how to change the process so that happens. I mean, right now, if I was just guessing, I would say that you know, and I don't want to hold anything back, but it seems like the building permits that have already issued aren't in compliance because they're not in compliance with our decision. You know, something was given by one department, it wasn't approved by a second one that needed to have the sign off. There's something being lost in translation if people come to the zoning board office to get a sign off and you sign off on the plans, and you know, you do an amazing job up here going through all the plans and making sure they're correct. And quite honestly, we spend a lot of time on these projects to come up with proper conditions. And we're under the assumption that once the conditions are placed, conditions are followed. And like Ken just said, it seems like we keep getting, you know, forgiveness after the fact. So I would say that we just vote on the change on the architecturals and then figure out where we go from there. But, something's gonna have to change that just to make sure that what is legally allowed by our permit is being followed. Because when we do the permit and the estate approves, and the state approves, I assume they assume it's what was written.
Right.
Absolutely correct, Bob. 100%. So I think maybe we should take a vote on this soon, but I think that's something, Noreen, I can help you with the board's permission in terms of talking to department heads throughout town hall.
So I would make a motion that we approve the changes discussed with the architecturals and the plot plans with the reduction of the decks, so that part of this permit is brought back into compliance.
Right, so the motion was made by Bob. Is there a
Second.
second? Seconded by Ed. Do a roll call vote. Ed,
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Ken,
And Foreman, aye.
Bob,
Robert Dugan, aye.
Mary,
Mary Berry I.
and TJ Hurry, aye. So the motion passes unanimously, the insubstantial changes as stated to the project. All right. Up next, we have application 78-19, Buzzards Bay Development LLC, 40 Shore Street in Falmouth. It is a review of the draft decision with possible vote. And the voting members on this are myself, Bob Dugan, Ed Van Kuren, and Mary Berry. So Noreen circulated draft decision. I think there were some revisions made recently regarding some of the conditions. And maybe we should take, well, I assume everyone's had a chance to review. And I think the best course of action might be taking it condition by condition and discussing whether we should make any further changes before we actually vote on them. How's that?
I'd also suggest that because this is a draft tonight, maybe we should go over the condition just for discussion, but actually put the actual vote off the next meeting.
Sure, I think that's appropriate, Bob. So we do have a few items that we need to figure out in terms of the conditions. All right.
So do you want me to read each condition and then we can discuss it?
I was just going to ask Bob, do you want it to be me? Do you
Yeah.
want to do it?
I'm taking a swig of the water.
Yeah, we could alternate. You could take odds. I could take evens.
Yeah, I'm okay. Okay, so these are the current draft conditions. Condition number 1, the construction shall be substantially as shown on the plan submitted and reviewed by the board, subject to any additional listed conditions. And that's pretty self-explanatory. 2, the maximum height of the dwelling shall be 30 feet.
Bob, I'm just going to mention before we go any further that, and I've mentioned this before, but just so everyone knows who's watching at home or maybe through Zoom, that the hearing's been closed on this. There's no more testimony taken on this, and it's just the board discussing the conditions at this point.
Number 3, construction hours shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Saturday hours shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. No Sunday or holiday hours absent of emergency. All construction vehicles shall remain strictly on the subject property and not park on abutting streets. Construction vehicles are prohibited from idling on or near the premises outside of construction hours. During construction, efforts shall be undertaken to minimize impacts on abutters, including securing dumpsters, stabilizing soil to guard against erosion from a rain event, and ensuring the public roadways are kept clean. I don't know, Noreen, in that, we had mentioned at one point, dust protection. There's certain things they do on entrances because it is a main road. They also have washing stations because it's a main road, so I don't know if something like that would be going in there, just to be a little more specific, because everything's just been repaved downtown and it's a main thoroughfare. Item 4, the applicant shall provide to the police, building department, and ZBA the name and phone number and email address of a project contact individual for the duration of the construction process, to ensure that any questions or concerns, including those of abutters and residents, are timely managed. And do you have to do you have to list anything there that says when they have to supply that? Like, I mean, can they supply that when they start getting their permits or before clearing, or is there anything specific?
So we do usually ask for that before anything gets started, so I could certainly add in there prior to issuance of a building permit.
Yeah, or
so-
prior to work, clearing the site or work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you really want something in place, you want that information before they're starting to do any site work, so that if there is an issue, people know who to speak, to speak to.
And on that item number 3, with the construction vehicles.
Yep.
And I read this through before, but is there a section in this later on that also talks about construction materials kept on site?
Not to my recollection, but I'd be.
So maybe we can also add
that in there. Yeah.
And it does say not park on abutting streets. I think we should also add something in there, because the main sidewalk that goes down is also on that. There's a sidewalk on that side. So not to obstruct any sidewalks.
Okay.
What about the Saturday hours? Given that if it's tourist season, there's an awful lot of pedestrian and car traffic coming down there.
Yeah, I've got another comment on that too. So I noticed that since the paving has been redone and they've done the roads, they've changed signage downtown, and they're trying to keep all large trucks off of the main road. So we may want to check with, I don't know, town management, that on a project like this, where it's going to be large construction vehicles, as there a certain location they want them to come. They may not want them on the main street. They may actually be bringing them up, by a side street.
Yeah, I can certainly check to see if there's a preferred construction route that they want vehicles to take.
So 5, the applicant shall meet with the Falmouth Police Department to determine when police details would be required. All police details required by the Falmouth Police Department or per the applicant's own choice shall be paid for by the applicant. I don't know if anything goes in there at this point too, but I know with a lot of these projects, when they have to start doing the utilities, there's a utility pole that I think may be relocated at that site. And when that work is done, they're gonna have to, I assume, close Shore Street. So that's another thing you may want to check with the town. Again, like, Mary said, would this be done in the summer? Shore Street's a thoroughfare. So they would have to have some kind of plan, and they'd have to let everyone know well in advance when if they're gonna do any utilities where they have to close Shore Street.
And I think testimony did have it that pole would absolutely be relocated, Bob.
Yeah, and I know, I went by a project the other day in Mara Vista. It's just a residential, but they decided to do the utilities, and it closed Randolph Street. Pretty much Spring Bars Road. And once you do that, you've got to figure out where the detours are going. And for Main Street, Shore Street's the only cut through. So that means traffic can back up on Main Street, or traffic from the beach end. They have no way to turn back around unless they push them onto Scranton Ave.
Yeah, going all the way to Scranton.
6, prior to starting work under the comprehensive permit, the applicant and general contractor shall hold a pre-construction meeting with the building commissioner, town engineer, Department of Public Works representative, site inspector, zoning administrator, town planner, and Board of Health agent to review the requirements to ensure compliance with this decision. Noreen, in that case, is something like that that is met prior to building permits, or is that something that's met once they're issued?
No, so this is pre-construction. So this is everybody getting together, discussing what the proposal is and if there's any concerns that anybody has that how something needs to be managed. That would be sort of the initial meeting that everybody would have.
In this language is similar in other decisions, right? It's something that you automatically do.
Yes.
So just to highlight again, it literally says here to ensure compliance with this decision. So if there are any issues at that point, maybe they can also stress prior to building permits that anything that's in the decision has to have sign off by the ZBA prior to issuance of building permits.
Sure, so I can certainly remind people at that meeting that there are specific conditions that need to be.
Yeah, and that way you wouldn't miss anything.
So is the clerk of the works or person appropriate to have at this meeting?
Yes, so that person, I did have a conversation with the engineering department, and they recommended what they're calling a site inspector, who would be doing essentially the review for the engineering department that would essentially take the place of a clerk of the works type of thing, but they recommended the language site inspector.
Thank you.
7, the applicant shall obtain an approved driveway permit from the engineering division prior to any work within the Shore Street town right of way and prior to issuance of any building permit application for the project. The applicant contractor shall meet town standard requirements and post any required bond. Release of the bond shall be subject to approval by the engineering division. 8, where the comprehensive permit is made specifically under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, Section 20 to 23, allowing the override of local zoning density. There should be no as-of-right changes made to the subject property. Any changes requested shall be properly submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals as provided for under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. 9, we'll probably have some discussion on, but the development shall be limited to a maximum of 8 single-family dwellings with a maximum of a number of bedrooms. Now, in this case, they proposed 29 bedrooms, where 3 were 3 bedrooms and 5 were 4 bedrooms. And then 2 of the units shall remain in perpetuity affordable to eligible purchasers whose annual income shall not exceed 80% of the area median income as determined by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. The 2 affordable dwellings shall be eligible for inclusion in the town's subsidized housing inventory, SHI, maintained by DHCD. Any increase in the number of bedrooms is a violation of the zoning bylaw in this permit. And currently on 2 of the units that we had discussed previously, there was the suggestion that one of the 3-bedroom units and one of the 4-bedroom units would be those affordable units. So does the board have any discussion on that one regarding the bedroom count, number of bedrooms per unit, and the units that are given as the affordables?
We said last time we talked, I think we had the unit 3 and 6 were to be the portable units.
Yeah, so as far as the setup right now, I guess we have to agree if we're going to go along with what they propose, which is 3 3-bedroom units and 5 4-bedroom units. You could limit to, again, you could go to 28 bedrooms. You could do 4 3-bedrooms and 4 4-bedrooms. Right now, so their current ratio right now is more 4s than 3s, and it, if you were thinking of a mix of 4s and 3s, it's probably better off to keep them at a 50% ratio, so there's an even split, which again would be a 28 bedroom development with 4 3-bedroom units and then 4 4-bedroom units. And we could still designate 1 3 and 1 4 for the affordable. I know that there was some suggestion at one time, you know, would you want to do a complex that's all 3-bedroom units or what the layout is? So does anyone have any comments on that at all?
No, only that my notes, I got 4 and 4. As far as bedrooms.
The proposed affordables were units 3 and units 6. Is that correct, Bob? That's what I had.
Yeah, so on
Yes.
so on just the building bedroom count. So their current proposal is a total bedroom count of 29, with 3 of the buildings being 3 bedrooms and then 5 of the buildings being 4 bedrooms.
And both affordables being 4-bed units.
And on the affordable, one would be a 4 and one would be a 3. You know, my personal opinion is if we're going to do a mix of bedrooms, I think you should do a 50-50. So you'd get the number of bedrooms in the unit wouldn't be 29, it would actually be 28. And that would allow 4 3-bedroom buildings and 4 4-bedroom buildings.
I'm in favor of that, Bob, the 28 bedrooms.
Yeah,
4, 3,
that's
and
what I
4,
have on my
4.
sheet that I keep scoring.
All right, so then if we went with the 28 bedrooms, then we would give one of the 3-bedroom units as an affordable and then one of the 4-bedroom units as a. Item number 10, there should be no further division or subdivision of the premises or the creation of additional housing units or any other structures such as sheds without further approval of the Zoning Board of Appeals in the form of an amendment to this decision. Number 11, with the new layout of number of bedrooms that we did, that should read, the development shall be limited to a maximum of 28 bedrooms. Basement space may not be used as a bedroom space, nor may studies, offices, or family rooms be converted to bedroom space. And any private non-bedroom rooms shall have a 4-foot wide cased opening. 12, the renovation of the historical dwelling shall reflect the December 10th, 2019 letter of the Falmouth Historical Commission. Just because this mentions the historical dwelling, which is that Sylvanus Robinson house in front, I do have some questions on that or some discussion on that. So there's a very good chance that that building exterior and interior currently would have lead paint or hazardous materials just due to the age of the structure. And that building is sited directly on the sidewalk and directly on the main road. Nothing has ever been submitted that shows that there's ever been any kind of a test for lead paints or hazardous materials. And I think because of its location, and they have discussed that they would be gutting most of the house and doing extensive renovation, that a test must be done on that property prior to dismantling or renovation to see if there's any hazardous materials. And if any are found, they'd have to report that to the health department and the building department. And at that point, any demolition or renovation of that property would have to meet whatever the criteria is for hazardous materials. And my concern with that is that, you know, a lot of these historic dwellings over the years, they found so many issues with lead paint. And a lot of times, you know, there's sanding, there's removal, they're pulling off siding. And what tends to happen is that paint and those materials comes out in a dust form or microparticles, and they disperse in a wide area. If you're doing that kind of renovation on a historic house that is in such close proximity to neighbors and streets, if you don't encompass that when you're doing that kind of a work, it could affect the adjacent surroundings and also the public areas. And it's something that I don't think we had really time to get into when we discussed the project. But I'd like to see some kind of wording that would handle that. And, you know, the health department, the building department, the problem is those departments can't put that a test must be done if it's there. So I would like something in the decision that that property must be tested due to the the chance that that is gonna have hazardous materials, and then whatever is found is taken care of in a proper manner with whatever the departments is prior to renovation. I know that with a lot of these lead paint properties, I've seen it before in the Village Green, when they did some of those nice historic properties, even the repainting outside, they actually had to encompass the house, and anyone working on that material has to be licensed for hazardous waste and being able to do encapsulant. So I know this is a development company, but somebody in that development company would actually have to be licensed in order to handle any of that. You couldn't just put a crew in there unless there was something that had someone that had a specific license. So maybe we could work on some kind of a wording that might go in there. You might want to talk to the health department or Noreen or building and see how they handle something like that.
Yeah,
I
what,
would just add that we did discuss it at the last
Oh.
meeting. It was brought up. And I would also add a concern about insulation with asbestos in it, which is something that is often found in these older homes.
We may even want to require that there be a bond. You have a bonded abatement done to handle anything that isn't covered. I would just want the building department to be very aware of it, because God forbid a permit goes out and somebody starts doing that, and then you have areas next door that have children or something that are susceptible to lead paint.
Well said, Bob. You definitely want to make sure that there's proper mediation in
yeah,
place.
I will add that to that line.
Item
you.
number 13, parking shall be one space inside the garage plus 2 spaces in the individual driveway. These driveway spaces shall have crushed stone. Uh, 14, prior to the issuance.
Excuse me, the one
Yep.
thing you may want to discuss as part of that, and it, I believe, comes up in another location as well, is there still is, as part of the application, one unit which is proposed to have a 2-car garage.
So as far as garages go, if they're, it looks like everything else has a single, and if everything has a single, I think you should stick with a single. If you have one unit that has a 2-car garage, I think it shows social, you have social class concerns at that point. That, and I think that was the market rate unit on the plan. I would suggest that if we do limit them to 1-car, we limit them to 1-car garages, but have something in there that when that 2-car goes to a 1, they're not filling that in with additional living space. They're just actually removing that. It actually makes the footprint smaller in that building.
I definitely want uniformity there in terms of the parking. At least as far as the parking garages go.
So I guess, Noreen, just figure out the wording for just number 1 would be 1-car garages. And then on the one that they're revising, it's just going to actually reduce the footprint versus adding more space. Number 14, prior to the issuance of a building permit or commencement of construction, the applicant is required to submit to Mass Housing a request for final approval of the project in accordance with the comprehensive permit rules 760 CMR 56-04, 0.04, and the guidelines including part 3 concerning affirmative fair housing, marketing, and resident selection. And a copy of the final approval letter shall be submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals. 15, the 2 affordable year-round, not seasonal family ownership units shall be included in the subsidized housing inventory, SHI, and shall be subject to a regulatory agreement, fair marketing and income guidelines. The affordable units may not be rented or sublet. Certification of compliance with affordable housing regulation shall be submitted after the sale to the Zoning Board of Appeals and Falmouth's affordable housing designee. The certification shall include documentation that each affordable unit is occupied by a qualified owner as their primary residence. Home ownership association fees should be adjusted to be reduced for the affordable units. The affordable unit shall remain affordable in perpetuity with a use restriction recorded at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds. copy to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and affordable housing designee, and shall survive sale. Any resale of an affordable unit shall properly managed by an affordable housing specialist and reported in advance to the ZBA and the town's affordable housing designee, and include the fact that any future owner is subject to all terms and conditions listed herein as provided in the condominium documents.
Is there a definition of primary residence?
So that's been an issue that has been raised in the past. And I think the open expectation is that for an affordable homeowner, that this would be their primary and only residence. You know, the intent is, I think, primarily here to make sure that, you know, somebody's not looking to purchase this as their, you know, second or seasonal home type of thing.
I understand that, but there's traditionally a very specific definition of that. Wondered what our definition is of.
Yeah, that's a good question.
We have some definitions within the bylaws for Falmouth, but there's also definitions, for example, for HUD at a federal level there, and those I am assuming are the same as the state level.
Right, I would expect that it would be identifying or matching HUD's language.
Regarding the line that says the homeownership association fees should be adjusted to be reduced for the affordable units, I'd like to add something in there that says, but their voting rights will not be reduced with the homeowners association. Number 16. The two affordable units shall be designated as Building 3 and Building 6. One affordable unit must be completed per 3 market rate units. A certificate of occupancy for the final market rate unit may not be issued until all affordable units have been completed and granted a certificate of occupancy. All dwellings shall have the same general exterior appearance and construction quality and be in conformance with the approved plans. On where we did designate Building 3 and Building 6, do we have to refer to a plan? Because I know they switched from letters to numbers.
Yes, I will add the reference for the updated site plan.
So I do just have a question regarding when units are sold in these projects in general. So I know you can't get the final certificate of occupancy, but is there anything that stops someone for selling just all the market rate units and then waiting on affordable units? I mean, is there a criteria for that somewhere where if they sell, you know, for every 2 market they sell, they have to then make sure that they handle the affordable unit before the project moves to the next phase?
Well, I think when you are talking about somebody developing strictly in phases, meaning that they're intending to construct, we'll say, only 4 units at a time, you can require that they have the buyer in place for that affordable unit. I think, you know, the specific issue is that where developments, you know, like this is not proposed to be phased. So the affordable, you know, they obviously want to make sure that the affordable units are built and that they are properly sold in a timely fashion. And I think by withholding a CO from a final market rate unit, it puts the pressure on the developer to make sure that the affordable units have been built and sold.
Okay, so my question is this is an 8-building project. And then 2 of the units, of course, would be affordable. So So could you have that for every 3 market rate units that are sold and occupied, you must then sell and occupy one of the affordable units?
I don't see why not.
So maybe we could put that in there, because I would assume they wouldn't do that, but in these 40B projects in general, I don't really see many things that actually would stop somebody from just selling the market rate units and leaving the affordable units empty. Unless there's some kind of clause that says they have to. And if they're selling, they gave us an idea what their price point was anyway, so I don't think it would put them in any kind of economic concern, because they would have basically half of the project built with market and an affordable, and then they'd go on to the next half to sell and move those.
Yeah, I imagine if they're not phasing though, that all these buildings will be under construction and probably completed in the same.
Yeah, so I
general
don't have any issue with them actually completing all the buildings, actually
Yeah.
building them and getting them closed and getting the COs done.
Yep.
It's more that if they're now selling them to new ownership, that for every 3 market rate units they sell, they have to then put someone in that affordable unit before they sell the rest. Uh, 17, the first floor master bedrooms and the first floor bathroom shall be handicap visitable. All 4 dwellings shall have a minimum of 2 full bathrooms. Do we need to put in any kind of definition so people know what handicap visible is?
I think you do.
Right, because there's a difference between handicap visitable and what's the term if it's meant to
Accessible.
accessible.
So I know it has to do with like openings and door openings. Number 18, a mailbox station shall be sited on the lot. Can we also put in that a mailbox station shall be sited on the lot and shown on the plan?
Sure.
Actually, you may even want to put in there that the developer consult with the postal department. Because I know this was an issue on one of the other projects where the box was planned, the postal department said they didn't want it there, so maybe put applicant shall consult with the postal office where a mailbox station can be sited and then show that on a plan.
Yep, that's how it works.
Right, because they might want one of those community boxes versus individual for each address.
Number 19, trash removal and snow plowing shall remain private. So I don't know if we need anything more specific than that regarding snow plowing, they're not putting any material blockading it, the driveway or the street. And the same thing regarding, I know it's got trash removal as private, but on the plan, did they show where there was a dumpster or how they were handling trash removal?
No, there was no dumpster. I imagine this is a private trash pickup where once a week they will have a company drive in and pick up the trash.
So maybe just put trash removal and snow plowing shall remain private and shall not hinder anything in the main driveway entrance or the main street.
Shall remain the responsibility of the homeowners association and individual property
Yeah,
owners.
correct. Number 20, any waiver not specifically granted herein is denied.
Should we be more specific of that? Any waiver of the town's bylaws, or
Should we put that only the waivers voted herein are granted?
Well, I
Versus,
think, yeah, I think the rationale for that wording was that they have requested specific waivers and you would vote on those, and probably it should be at the end of the waiver list, so that
Okay.
you're basically saying, we've voted on the items you've requested waived. Anything you've not requested is therefore not waived. So if you'd like, I can just move that down to the
yeah,
bottom.
just move that to the waivers list.
Sure.
So here are the waivers requested. So the waiver from bylaw section 240-24A, where only one single family home is allowed per lot. 22, the waiver from bylaw section 240-66C8 regarding the number of bedrooms exceeding one bedroom per 13,500 square feet of lot area, requiring an enhanced nitrogen removal system. 23, the waiver from bylaw section 240-66D regarding one dwelling per lot. 24, the waiver from bylaw 240-67A requiring minimum frontage. 25, the waiver from bylaw 240-68A requiring minimum setback from street frontage. 26, the waiver from bylaw 240-69 maximum lot coverage by structure. 27, this comprehensive permit shall be a master permit, which shall subsume all local permits and approvals normally issued by local boards, other than as specifically enumerated in a condition. The Board of Health and Conservation Commission are excluded from this provision. 28, the comprehensive permit shall not be transferred without express written approval of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So on the one about the comprehensive permit shall not be transferred, is there any other wording for that? So let's say they did transfer, someone transferred a permit.
So
It doesn't
I
really
think-
say what that means.
Well, so the intent here is that you don't want to have a circumstance where somebody goes through the permitting process and then determines that they want to sell the project. Now, they can do it, but the intent for having notification is so that the new purchaser understands that they are subject to all the same rules and requirements that the previous owner or developer was subject to.
So can you put the comprehensive permit is not allowed to be transferred without?
No.
express written- No?
Well, I
I mean,
don't
it says
know.
shall not without approval. So what happens in that
Right.
case if they do? And they say, oops, we did it. It doesn't really
well-
say that you need, it doesn't say you need the approval to transfer it. It just says,
Yeah, I would have to check with the state on that, but I know that they would be very interested as well because, you know, these approvals are based on so many representations. And if representations were made and approval was granted based on that, and then they were to transfer the property and the approvals to someone else, you know, they may have to establish a new limited dividend organization. There may be all these steps that they have to go through, including with the state.
so maybe you could just check if there's a just firmer way that they allow you to put that,
Okay.
you know, you can't do it unless you have written approval.
It comes
Or-
back to
or
us as an insubstantial change, doesn't it, Maureen? I think it's happened at least once before.
Yes, it would come before the board.
29, each condition in this decision shall run with the land and shall in accordance with terms be applicable to and binding on the applicant and the applicant's successors and assigns. Exterior parking or storage of any unregistered vehicles on the premises is strictly prohibited. This shall be included in the condominium documents. A certified plot plan, this is number 31. A certified plot plan stamped by a licensed surveyor shall be provided to the ZBA for review and approval prior to the application for a building permit. Plan shall show at a minimum the following: lot dimensions, driveway limits of pavement, limits of sidewalk, building locations, building footprints matching the architectural plan dimensions, closest distance to the nearby property line from each building, retaining wall locations, closest distance to nearest property line from the retaining wall, measured from the limits of excavation required for installation of the wall, including the wall foundation, walled extents, and any required drainage aggregate, reinforced backfill and geosynthetic reinforcement, locations of drainage structures, including limits of infiltration areas and the limits of work to be demarcated in the field. This plan shall serve as the base for an as-built plan of the project upon completion. 32, a certified as-built plan shall be provided to the ZBA for review for conformance to the approved plans prior to the certificate of occupancy. The as-built plan shall be an overlay on the site layout plan C101 with the addition of the proposed stormwater management plan, the stormwater management system structures and pipes added to serve as the approved base plan. Any deviations from the approved plan shall be clearly shown in a red line over the base plan, which should be faded back for clarity. The as-built shall be certified by both a licensed surveyor and registered engineer that work was performed in conformance with the approved plans and all permits. Could we put prior to issue of certificate of occupancy?
For that one,
Yeah,
it's written in the
it just
second
says prior.
line there.
Yeah, it says prior to certificate, maybe prior to issuance, so so the building department again knows that they have to have information in advance.
Okay.
Please use the word before instead of prior.
Okay.
Number 33. If an agreement to allow surface grading onto the abutting town parcel is made and the retaining wall is eliminated or reduced in height, the applicant shall submit the revisions to the zoning administrator for administrative approval or referral to the zoning board of appeals for approval at their discretion. We had a suggestion.
So when is this going to happen?
Well, so currently on the plans, there's a retaining wall proposed to be a maximum exposed height of 5 feet.
Yes.
This is proposed to be a fence or a rail installed on top of the retaining wall. The height of the exposed wall plus fencing or railing may not exceed 6. So maybe that second section, first of all, should come first. Because that's really the only thing
When
that
would
we
the
have
agreement take place is my question in the whole thing.
Right. Well, what they have said most recently was that they did not intend to grade onto the town's land. So the intent is that they're not doing that. I guess the question is if they started work and then they decided they had to, or they desired that, I guess they would have to stop what they were doing and get that approved.
So could we just do what they've proposed, just make a decision on the retaining wall proposed and that there shall be no grading onto abutting land? And then
Okay.
I don't even
Absent
think
approval.
yeah, because I don't even think you need the other section, because if that's an agreement they do after the fact, they'd have to come back here anyways.
Well, I
And
guess if they haven't asked for it,
Yeah,
then why would we even go to the extent of saying if they did this, then do an agreement? I would
Yeah, I
think you
think-
just say they can't do it. They haven't
Okay.
asked for it.
Right. I think the town engineer may have at some point in time considered that in order for them to do that, they would need to, or it would possibly occur that grading would be affected onto the town land. But I think, we certainly can say that they're not going to do that absent prior approval.
But why say it? They haven't asked for it. So my
Yeah, so-
question is, why
We
not
could just
just say they
Take it
can't?
out.
No,
yeah, just go with,
I would
Oh,
just
I'm sorry.
say that that's a condition that they not do it.
so just go with the retaining wall as proposed and just say no surface grading is allowed on the abutting land.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean to further complicate the issue, but and Noreen, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have knowledge about this. I think a retaining wall over 4 feet requires a building permit, and a fence over 6 feet requires some sort of approval as well.
Right. So at some point in time, and I believe it is over 3 feet, it's 3 or 4 for a retaining wall, that they will have to have engineering drawings to show to the building department. And I think my note to you folks was to consider what you thought would be a reasonable height, because they're showing on their plans that the retaining wall is going to have a variable height, but at the maximum height of exposed wall, you would see 5 feet of height. And then on top of that wall, they're planning to install a fence or rail. The height of that fence or rail was not called out in the plans, but if you scale it to the height of the wall, it appeared as though it could be a few feet in height. So what I wanted to bring to your attention was you probably should consider what would be a reasonable maximum exposed height, which would be the height of the wall plus the height of the fence on top of that wall.
So if they put the retaining wall in, would the top of the retaining wall be the grade of the adjacent property?
So the base of the retaining wall, the base exposed of the retaining wall would be grade. You know, naturally, as for a retaining wall, there will be a certain amount of wall below grade to anchor it.
But is the where the top of the wall is, where the grade is on whatever's abutting, is that level? So on an abutter's property, is the top of the wall at their is at their elevation, and then the bottom of the wall is actually below elevation on the project side?
I can't speak to those details of that specific wall.
I mean,
So
I'd have to
Barbara-
look, but if the top of the wall is at grade with the adjacent property, then you could put a 6 feet fence, because on the adjacent property, you'd only be seeing a 6 feet fence. You
So
wouldn't be
Bob,
seeing.
you're asking if an abutter's looking out their window toward the proposed project, are they looking?
Are
at
they
a
just
6-foot
looking at a fence? Yeah, are they
Are
looking
they
at a
looking at
fence, or are
a-
they looking at a wall plus a fence?
Got it.
Yeah, I can check on that for you.
If they're looking at just the fence, you could go with the normal height fence at 6 feet. If they're looking at the wall plus a fence, then you'd want to make sure the whole thing isn't more than 6.
Agreed.
All right, so you want to limit the exposed height to the wall plus fence as being a maximum of 6.
I just wanted to find out first what is on the abutter's side. See, when the butters look out, are they just looking at the fence, or are they looking at a wall plus a fence?
Yeah, I think that portion may be proximate to the town-owned land. So, but I can double check with engineering.
Yeah, just to check. Number 34, at the applicant's expense, a site inspector will be designated for this project from the firms that have been pre-vetted by the town. The inspection engineer will perform or oversee inspections, testing, material approval, reports, or other construction-related services required, and report directly to the town. The applicant shall establish a 53G account for the building department for the inspection engineer. I guess my one question is there, where it says a site inspector will be designated for this project, is the town designating the engineer, or is the applicant picking?
No. We already discussed, I believe this, which was in a different 40B. It has to be, oh no, it's in our procedures. We talked about this, and the person is picked by the town, not by the applicant.
So then I think we should put in there, a site
Correct.
inspector will be designated by the town for this project.
And Noreen, is the site inspector the same as the inspection engineer?
Yeah, I apologize. It should say site inspector all the way through. So I have corrected those other two.
So item number 35, The site inspector will be specifically responsible for ensuring adherence to the requirements in soil erosion and sediment control standards of conditions, inspection and approval of the driveway subgrade, gravel base, binder course, and curbing and finish course. At no point shall the contractor construct on a driveway surface that was not inspected and approved by the inspection engineer. The inspection engineer will be specifically responsible to review the as-built plans for compliance with the approved plans.
And again, I'm going to change those references that
Yeah.
need to all say site inspector.
Number 36, installation of the retaining wall, including all wall components, drainage layer, impervious layer, geosynthetic grid, or other design feature, shall be set back sufficiently from the property line such that construction, inspection, maintenance, and repair of the wall can be contained entirely on the premises without impacting abutting properties. The design and drawing shall include cross-sections, profiles, details, and layout, including limits of work on the site. The height of the retaining wall plus fence on top may not exceed 8 feet in height. The perimeter fence shall not exceed 8 feet in height.
So
Are
again,
there alternatives, Noreen, to 8 feet?
well, that's why I had highlighted that to you. I know there were abutters who had appeared before the board who had discussed the preference for an 8-foot tall fence. That being said, there are 2 abutting properties on Shore Street that appear to be in relatively close proximity to the lot line. And I just wanted the board to consider, you typically want to have a standard sized fencing around the property. And that if you have a house that is, say, within 10 feet of that lot line, an 8-foot fence on the property line is going to appear to be very substantial. So you have the authority to determine what height of the wall or fence you determine will be reasonable.
And is this wall the one that's between the property in question and this town-owned land?
Yes, so they do plan to fence the property in. Part of that perimeter is that retaining wall with a fence or railing on top.
So then this 8 foot, if we did it, would also be for that area?
I think it makes probably best sense, given that the property is relatively level, that you would want to maintain a similar height around the perimeter of the property.
Thank you.
So I think, what you need to determine is, for a perimeter fence, you want a 6-foot tall fence, is 8 feet reasonable to the board?
So on the, not to make it more complicated, but on the retaining wall. So if you've got the retaining wall, how far is that on the property line? Because if it's on the property line, then the geogrid is going to encroach on the neighboring property. So is the geogrid on the property line, or is the wall on the property?
I think the wall was relatively close to the property line, but that may be something that, I don't know that there were dimensions on the plan that showed exactly what distance the edge of the wall was from the property line.
Can you check with engineering on the plan that was submitted that they looked at on the wall? Where the geogrid is located on that plan?
Okay.
Because that can go out 4 to 5 feet. Let's see here. The 37, construction shall be in accordance. Oh, I think we did 30. Did we do that? We did 37. Did we do 37?
No, we did 36. We're on
Hey.
to 37.
It's all blended together. All right, 37. Construction shall be in accordance with all requirements of town engineering, including the town's 2019 soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions. No construction shall begin until the required erosion and sediment controls are installed and approved. A stabilized construction entrance is installed and approved. Stormwater and infiltration areas are protected and the protection means are approved and the limit of work is demarcated in the field and approved. I think, I don't know if this is where that would be added in, but on those erosion controls, it's not really part of it, but again, because of dust controls,
Right.
there's a wash station that you usually put for the trucks entering in and out. So maybe they can add in there somewhere that they would also have to have a wash station shown at the entrance.
That makes sense.
Yeah, number 38. Prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, the site address 40 Shore Street and building number shall be posted in accordance with section 99(1) as approved by the fire prevention inspector. Building 1 shall be the rehabilitated structure and numbering shall proceed clockwise around the site to building 8, located immediately east of the proposed stormwater leaching system as shown on the site layout plan C-101 and to be formally assigned with the building permit application. So those numbers, Noreen, are based on that does do the proper numbers that we're discussing?
Right, so engineering has essentially pre-addressed the property. That being said, the units don't get a formal number until the building permit application process.
Okay, number 39, all uncontaminated stormwater runoff shall be directed to recharge within the premises. So is there, I know there isn't any so where it mentions all uncontaminated stormwater runoff. So on these projects, do they mention anything about contaminated stormwater runoff or is that just wording they use?
I think that the intent here is that, stormwater runoff, so that would be from any pervious surfaces is directed to recharge within the premises.
So where it says uncontaminated, is that just something that it's the
No.
best wording to use versus, yeah? Okay.
I guess you could just say stormwater. You could just list it as stormwater shall be directed.
Yeah, I mean, you might want to do that. It just, when you use uncontaminated, it just sounds like there is contaminated.
Yeah. Let's hope there's not. Yeah. I will remove that word.
Number 40. And actually, before we just pass that, so on these controls with trucks coming in the site, so how is something like that handled with when you're having big diesel trucks and fuels and things? Is there a standards that they follow for, gas leakage, that kind of stuff, oil leakage, or is that part of would that be part of that that oversight person to?
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, this is a relatively tight site. So there's not going to be a lot, I would think, that would be going on that somebody's not keeping an eye on.
I would hope you have a spill kit on site or something like that. I'm just
Yeah.
not sure what the procedure is.
Number 40, maintenance and preservation of dry wells, leaching trenches, catch basins, manholes, and subsurface leaching systems. In addition to fences, walls, driveways, and parking areas shall be the responsibility of and added to the homeowners association documents. I would just change the sentence to say the homeowners association and homeowners association documents. Uh, 41, The town is specifically not waiving fees associated with construction, including but not limited to the water line, water tapping sleeve and valve, water meters and services and engineering, such as the bond of the street opening permits and building department fees. The plan involves the installation of one town-specified fire hydrant at the terminus of the water main. Plan shall be submitted to the Department of Public Works Water Superintendent. The private driveway shall not be considered for acceptance by the town. As such, the driveway and water main shall be privately owned, and maintenance shall be the responsibility of the condominium owners in perpetuity. Any required utility easement shall be in a form and manner as prescribed by the town. So would that be the condominium owners or the homeowners association?
Probably the homeowners association.
Yeah, I'd assume it's the HOA, right?
Yeah. A plan shall show location of septic components and water service. Plan shall state all standards, policies, construction practices, or rules and regulations of the Falmouth Water Department shall be adhered to throughout the duration of the project. 42, the water line construction shall be in accordance with the town's water department standards. Water department fees and requirements shall be the responsibility of the developer. Prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall conduct a hydrant flow test to determine available flow and pressure to fight a fire and provide the results to the water superintendent and the fire chief.
Do we need to include any language about their approval of that, or how does that go, Noreen?
Yeah, I'm gonna double check on the language of that because that came up, I think, and we had just discussed that in the Locust Field development as well, about the timing for the water line and when that water line and hydrant is tested. So I will, double
I
check.
mean, my guess is the reason we're putting it in there and the fire department wants it is because if you start building and there is a fire, they need that hydrant functioning as soon as you start building materials on the site. So that might be the reason that they're putting that prior to issuance of building permits.
Yeah, I will double check on that.
Well, you know, the other thing here is it doesn't say they have to have a positive result in the test.
Very true.
Yeah, so I think we should add that in somewhere.
Well, I
Right.
would assume that upon the results, if the water superintendent and fire chief were unhappy, everyone would know about it. You know, I think we can let them officially do their job and make sure that it does meet their needs.
I would just say I'd put something in there,
Can you-
provide positive results to the water superintendent and fire chief. Because why
Well,
would
that's
they
why-
even take it to them if it wasn't at an approvable level?
Or
provide
you
the
could just,
results
or
to be
yeah, or you
approved
could
by-
just say requires approval, their approval.
And provide the results which
Yeah, you could
require
do that.
approval by the water superintendent and fire chief.
That's what I was hinting at.
The
but wait,
procedure
there's
for
more.
flushing, the procedure for flushing, disinfecting, and pressure testing of the water main, there it is, shall be approved by the town's water superintendent.
Nope,
So
that's just the process.
So that's the process,
procedure.
yeah.
That's just, they're just saying you have to have that. It doesn't. it
Yeah, so they
doesn't
both,
say you
so
have
both
to
of
have a
those
different
items
result.
need approval. So again, Noreen, just because this is coming up and you will get the answer before anyone else, if it turns out that something like this has to be done prior to a building permit, if there's anything else currently that doesn't have that, then I would assume the building commissioner would want to put anything on hold until that's done.
Yeah, I think it would make sense, and this is probably something that the town needs to look at, where when these items come up that are pre-permitting or pre-CO or whatever, that they are essentially getting something in writing to ensure that these things have been done and done properly. And that should probably be part of the building file.
It's to make sure that the water is good enough and at the right levels. That's what that's all about.
43, whoops. 43, a utility easement shall be provided granting the town access to the water main, hydrant, curb, stops, and meter locations in a form acceptable to the town. The fee for review plus filling shall be paid by the applicant. Separate applications for water service shall be made for each dwelling with appropriate plans, including a meter request. 44, as-built drawings shall be submitted to the water superintendent and include ties for valves, hydrants, and fittings on the water main. A tie card for each house shall be provided with appropriate distances and locations identified. 45, landscaping shall be installed as presented in accordance with the landscape plan with all plant materials maintained in good health. A final landscape plan shall be provided to include any site layout revisions. Invasive vegetation shall be removed. Any material substantially diseased or dead shall be removed and replaced within 2 years of the final certificate of occupancy. Mature trees, particularly those proximate to lot lines, should be maintained to the extent possible. Trees straddling the property line shall be assumed to be jointly owned and cannot be damaged without prior written approval of both parties. The limit of work line shall be installed and inspected prior to site disturbance. Trees to be protected and preserved shall be identified in the field and on a plan, a copy of which shall be submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I just have one question on the on any material substantially diseased or dead shall be removed and replaced within 2 years. 2 years just seems like a long period of time if something is dead. Is that a standard, or can you do something less than that? Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute, Noreen.
Sorry. So if, they plant a tree and it dies, say 6 months, there normally is some period of time that trees particularly you would probably have covered by the nursery, such that if it died within the first, say, 6 months, they would automatically replace this. The intent here is just to make sure that, for the first full 2 years, that any landscaping that is placed remains in good health, and that, certainly if it's 6 months, 8 months, 13 months, whatever it is, that they will have to replace anything during that period of time. After the 2-year period of time, the intent is that the homeowners association would be in charge of maintaining the landscaping.
Is there any definition for invasive vegetation even?
That's depends on the property. I don't know that there was anything raised here about invasive materials. There may actually not be any on this particular property.
You could make reference to, there's a listing that Massachusetts puts out.
Right.
If you wanted to.
Yep.
I don't know.
So in my reading of the sentence, to me, it makes it sound like if you have a diseased or dead tree, you have 2 years in order to replace it. It doesn't sound like the 2 years is the span you have to replace everything. It actually sounds like if you have a diseased or dead tree, it has to be removed and replaced within 2 years. It almost sounds like you'd let the dead tree sit there for a year and a half and then do it. That's what I was wondering if there's a way. I mean, can you say shall be removed and replaced within one growing season? And this applies for 2 years in this time period applies within 2 years of the final occupancy.
So maybe what we want to say instead is that for the duration of the first 2 years following the issuance of the CO, that the landscaping remains the charge of the developer, and that post that period of time, because that's essentially what you're saying is you don't want to have a circumstance where a new tree is planted and then, 6 months down the road, it dies. And then people are trying to figure out, well, who's responsible for that? So this is just basically saying that for those first 2 years, it remains the developer's responsibility that the materials that are planted stay in good health. So I could
Okay, so maybe reverse the sentence.
rephrase that, right?
Oh, you could just reverse it. You could put within
Yeah.
2 years of the final certificate of occupancy, any
It's 2
materials.
years after, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it
Yes.
for 2 years after the last occupancy, certificate of occupancy is issued?
Any material substantially diseased or
material, yeah.
dead, yeah, shall be removed and replaced.
Yeah.
And I would put a time limit for the removed and replaced. You have to do it. You'd have to do it within a growing season. You couldn't just wait and do it later.
Well, I hate to say it, but they should be doing it in the fall. Otherwise, it won't live.
Well, maybe we could put in the fall. We could use the Barry definition and go with the fall. I'm fine with that. I'd rather pick a time of year just to do it so it gets done versus 2 falls. 46. A 6-foot tall fence shall be installed along the perimeter of the premises at a portion of the southerly lot line. The fence railing shall be installed on top of the retaining wall. The height of the fence or railing on top of the retaining wall shall not exceed 6 feet of exposed height. The fence shall be stepped down at any point approaching Shore Street or the sidewalk to ensure that no sight distance view of pedestrians is impeded. The fence shall be maintained in perpetuity by the 40 Shore Street Homeowners Association. Installation of the fence shall be complete prior to the issuance of a building permit for any residential dwelling. So there's another one. If I don't know if when we send these to the building department, if there's certain sections we should just put in bold so it's easier for them to just read the sections that have to be done before they issue the building permit.
Also, is that what the homeowners association is going to call themselves? I know in other points in the document, we've just referred to the homeowners association. I'm not sure if we know that yet.
So check on that one. And then let's see, 47, dark sky compliant lighting shall be provided and spotlights are prohibited. Any lighting installed to a side or rear of dwellings as required to meet code shall be dark sky compliant and not shed light on the subject property. Should you put in there building code or mass building code?
Excuse me, I think we lost Ed. Hold on.
Yes, Bob.
Well, I waited because if I didn't notice Ed was gone, so I was too into trying to figure out what the wording was.
So you were saying mass building code on the lighting, Bob?
Yeah, just because it
paragraph
just says
47?
code and it doesn't actually say what the code is. So
Sure.
see if Noreen got Ed.
So sorry, can we have Tom try to reach Ed? Ed somehow got disconnected.
And the remaining members, do you want to take a quick break maybe to
Yeah, why don't we take a quick
let Ed
pause?
reconnect?
We'll do
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right, yeah, we'll take 5 minutes, whatever it takes.
Sorry.
Number 48. Any deviation, no matter how minor, from plans submitted and approved shall be submitted to the board for approval prior to implementation of said change. The zoning administrator may make a determination as to whether the changes are minor in nature and can be approved administratively, or whether they will require a hearing for an amendment. Changes made prior to any approval or to an approval may be subject to a full hearing and are at risk that the ZBA may deny the request, subjecting any unapproved construction be ordered undone. So maybe just at the top, it says, from plans submitted and approved by the ZBA, then shall be submitted to the ZBA for approval. So they just know who approved it. (49) The applicant is required to provide number 1, regulatory agreement and declaration of restricted covenants for ownership project. 2, an affordable housing deed rider specifying that affordable units shall remain affordable in perpetuity. And 3, a declaration of trust for the homeowners association. And 4, condominium documents. These collective documents shall be provided to the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval by Town Council prior to the issue of any building permit, and subsequently recorded at the Registry of Deeds in Barnstable. The applicant shall create a limited dividend organization and be limited in its profits under Mass General Laws 40B. Any excess profit shall be paid by the applicant and distributed as required by the subsidizing agency and in accordance with the applicable law, regulations, and guidelines. Well, you have number 4, condominium documents. Can you put including condominium rules and restrictions?
What are those?
Yeah, so in the basic condominium document, they they'll have the declaration of trust for the homeowners association. Actually, it should also put in here I would assume the master deed.
That would be a good idea.
Master deed
But are
for the
they
condominium.
typically included in your condo documents?
Yeah, so the master deed has to be recorded, and they also do record the rules and regulations.
But I mean, usually if you have your condo documents, doesn't it include those documents as well in the documents, the document package?
Yeah, it should, but it also should include the declaration of trust for the homeowners association. So I would probably maybe you could actually put in parentheses on the condominium documents, the other items, the rules, the regulations, and the master deed. Because the master deed is going to show what the owner percentages are.
Absolutely. I just never heard of what you're talking about. Usually it's in the condo documents. What are the rules that you're talking about?
So in the condominium docs is just like a general rule, but some condominiums may not have rules and regulations. Some may just do their financial statements, or may just show voted participation versus some of the other issues like no pets, no rentals. I mean, you'd have to have in the condominium documents, the restrictions regarding rentals would have to be in there along with the affordable unit deed riders.
So that's not required under Massachusetts law. Certain provisions have to be included in your condo documents. It's a question.
Yeah, I'd probably leave it up to town council, but I know that when we're dealing usually in sales, when we say condominium documents, we also usually give a breakdown of what they can include.
Okay, I was just curious.
I do have one question for you
Yeah.
folks here, and I had actually made a note to myself. Following testimony, they had reported that the condominium fees would be adjusted so that it would be 3.86% for the affordable homeowners and 15.3% 0.38% for market rate units. So now
Yes.
would that go into this section here?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I'd
Okay.
say so, yeah.
And again, on when they were just talking about what those percentages are, you'd have to have in there, and that does not reduce ownership percentage or voting rights.
Okey doke.
And again, I guess I'd bold out prior to issuance of a building permit. Anywhere that comes in the document, just put it in bold. 50, the final lottery agent, lottery plan, and marketing plan shall be submitted to the zoning board of appeals prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. '51, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall enter into a monitoring agreement to be approved by town council. All costs associated with the monitoring agreement shall be borne by the applicant until the sale of the last affordable unit, and thereafter by the sellers of the affordable units. A copy of all financial information by the monitoring agent shall be provided to the zoning board of appeals after the initial round of sales. 52, this permit shall not take effect until a copy of the decision bearing the certification of the town clerk that 20 days has elapsed after the decision had been filed in the office of the town clerk with no appeal being filed is recorded in the Barnstable Registry of Deeds, or that an appeal has been filed within such time. Any person exercising right under a duly licensed, under a duly appealed comprehensive permit does so at risk that a court may reverse the permit, and that any construction performed under the permit may be ordered undone. 53, the permit shall lapse 3 years from the date of which this decision is filed in the town clerk's office. The substantial use of the comprehensive permit has not sooner commenced, except for good cause, as determined by the zoning board of appeals. In 54, the zoning board of appeals reserves the right to recall the applicant with such notice as the board deems proper to discuss unresolved matters or concerns. You know, Noreen, where you're gonna bold out about prior to building permit, I would do the exact same thing everywhere where it says prior to certificate of occupancy.
Will do.
Were there any other comments regarding what we discussed on this tonight?
You know, what does 54 mean?
So 54 was put in basically such that if there are, I assume, complaints that come into the board, or there's some kind of ongoing problem that appears not to be resolved, that the board could essentially request that the applicant come back and talk to them.
Yeah, so I guess my thing is, so what? What would there be? I mean, everything else seems to say something happens if something goes wrong. Here,
Right.
it's just they come and talk to us and talk about it.
Right. I guess it would depend on what the circumstance was. You know, I have yet to see that circumstance arise. I know many years ago in another community, there was a concern that the board had. And, you know, in some circumstances, they would issue timelines with permits, et cetera. It's just, I guess, sort of a catch-all. Again, where
Okay.
if there was something that came up, you know, you could say, you know, to the developer, we're going to, you know, we've had a number of complaints or whatever it is, we're going to discuss this matter on XYZ date.
Well, why not add something that says to discuss unresolved matters of concern and take appropriate action, or something that indicates that something would be done to fix it? I mean, all it says is we're going to discuss it. Right? I mean, just a little something more that makes it sound like we take some kind of action.
Right, and then I think the issue becomes, Mary, what actual recourse does the board have?
Well, I guess in that
At that
case, if we
point.
don't have any recourse, then take the thing out because it doesn't even have anything reason to be there. If all we're gonna do is sit around and talk about it. I mean, I don't have a problem with it either way, but my point is simply, as it's currently written, it's the focus is on discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you could
Resolution might be a better thing an ultimate resolution towards us, or, something like that. It's just that the wording just makes it, and maybe it's moving the words around.
But we could put it as discuss a resolution, or we could take it.
Yes,
it's not.
That's fine.
Could you also put in there sometime, I know you have matters of concern, which is one thing, but my biggest issue is matters of non-compliance.
Much better.
So maybe we could put matters of non-compliance with decision.
I vote for that.
Now we're talking.
Because at least we have teeth for that. We can do something with non-compliance.
All right, anything else? All right, Noreen, when do you suppose we can take this up again with those revisions?
Okay, so your next meeting is August 20th. That being said, you do have another 40B that night. I guess the question I have for you is how much time you would want to put aside for this. If you
And to help answer that, Noreen, I suppose we would have to take it condition by condition and vote on it. Does that require a
Yes.
roll call vote virtually? That'll take time.
I would bet that would be the case. I guess
It also does require time because it has to all be read in again. So
yeah, I mean, I guess
my other question is just on dates. Do we have any concerns with? I don't want to go by any required dates to chance any kind of constructive grant.
Yeah, so where the governor's or emergency orders have not been lifted at this point in time. So it's my understanding from town council that you are therefore not strictly subject to the expiration of those timelines. So that being said, given the schedule for August 20th, I guess I would propose September 3rd in that way you could put aside sufficient time. I mean, in the meanwhile, I will certainly get all these corrections put in for you. And that if anybody has any further comments relating to findings, or you would like some wording change or add something, just to email me and I'll put that in for you.
Sure. And on September 3rd, would this have its own night, or is there anything else scheduled for?
There are a couple of other cases, but they seem to be nothing substantial.
Okay. And it's not like we're gonna add on to that date at this time. We're going on break until August 20th. Okay. Yep. So that sounds good. Would anyone like to make that motion though?
So I'll make a motion to continue to September 3rd.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion to continue this to September 3rd. Motion was made by Bob and seconded by Ed. Roll call vote. Ed?
Ed Van Kuren, aye.
Bob?
Robert Dugan, aye.
Mary?
Mary Berry, aye.
And TJ Hurry, aye. So that is continued to September 3rd. Up next on the list, this comes with a certain caveat, amending the board's rules and procedures to require submission of decisions from all applicable boards prior to filing for a hearing vote anticipated. A vote will not be anticipated on this tonight because Noreen has reached out to town council for guidance on this, and it turns out we can't do it. It would be in violation of current bylaws. So the suggestion would be to take it to town meeting and amend the bylaws. Specifically, Noreen and I were discussing planning board. As we all know, there's many applications that get jointly filed with the planning board and us, usually in terms of the planning board reviewing for site plan review and us for special permit. As the bylaw currently stands, the applicant needs to file with both boards within 7 days their full application. So of course, submitting a full application to each board triggers a hearing date being scheduled. In order to make better use of our time, we thought it would be best for an applicant to go through the planning board, get whatever approvals they need, whether it be site plan review or anything else, and have that in hand prior to presenting anything to us. I know in the past it's been that we hear initially from the applicant, they represent to us that they're still going through site plan review with planning board, and then they continue until a point after they receive that site plan review. So that we just thought that was a better use of the board's precious time these days, especially meeting virtually and taking up some precious dates and time that an applicant should be before us with everything that they have before they even open up a hearing with us.
So do we know if any of that involves state law at all? Is there any state law that says they have to do that, or is it just local?
It's definitely local. I'm not sure if there's anything state. Noreen, do you know?
No, so this is basically community by community, what people prefer. What I have found worked optimally in another community was that the zoning board had a strong preference that all other boards would have done their reviews first. And, that did make a certain amount of sense, because obviously you don't want to have a circumstance where you're approving something and then somebody goes before conservation and conservation says, well, no, you can't put your footprint in the wetland. So if they've been through conservation, and certainly with planning, with the level of review that they do, it seems as though it can be a challenge if somebody is before planning and planning is saying, well, we want you to do things a certain way, and they're before the zoning board at the same time, and you're giving them perhaps different direction to go in. Just seems to make best sense that an applicant would be done with the planning board such that you would have their site plan approval in hand, so that when they come before the zoning board, you have that document to rely on as part of your record.
Could that not become part of their appeal?
In what way?
Decisions from other boards that are unfavorable, and some are favorable and some are unfavorable. Couldn't they use that as part of their appeal to us? Or am I missing the boat here on this?
Well, I don't think the other boards, certainly conservation conditions how and what can be done. I don't think there's much leeway around that. But I think certainly with planning board, when you're looking at, something more substantial of development, and say it is a larger development, and say somebody files with planning board, and then planning board needs to refer that filing to Cape Cod Commission. All of that process is going to take a certain amount of time. And if somebody has filed with the zoning board in the meanwhile, your time is tolling. you don't have a way to put somebody on hold.
I just wonder if we shouldn't be more specific and say all review by conservation, planning board, site plan review, historic commission, whatever, shall be
Yeah.
done before submission, rather than make it sort of this vague blanket.
Yeah, no, that would make sense.
I'm a little unclear. Do we have language for what's being proposed?
So no, I guess what I was hoping was that the board could amend its rules to basically advise applicants that you did not want them filing simultaneously. That being said, town council has looked at the bylaws and noted that the bylaws indicate a clear direction essentially to the applicant that they ought to indeed file simultaneously.
A lot of times the applicants play the boards off each other. Right? They say, oh, well, we don't seem to having any issue with zoning. They'll say that to planning, and then they'll come to us and say, planning said we should do it this way. So
Let's hope that's never the case.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
So it would be good to have each board chime in prior to coming to zoning.
So that, again, that's going to require a bylaw change.
Right.
So, there may be a board member or two who would like to sort of undertake that little project in getting in touch with planning and having some discussion about the virtue of making the change. And, certainly that would be something that
Who's
you would.
that? Is Matt Kerfoot current chair?
She
I
is.
believe so.
I think it's,
I'm happy to talk to her if you want.
Bob, were you gonna say something?
no, I think she is. I think they're doing co-chairs now, so I think it's her and Charlotte. I think Charlotte Harris.
Oh, interesting. So Ken, if you volunteered, go.
Sure, I'll volunteer for that one.
Fantastic.
Seems fairly like a fairly easy thing to volunteer.
That's what they say when they volunteer.
Compared to bylaw recodification.
Oh my God.
Ooh, speaking of, any update there?
No, I think.
Seeing
Yeah.
none.
I think that it
Kevin
is
Collin
virtual.
added.
I think it's about to be wrapped up. I think they are hoping to get essentially the final version out to everyone. So
Very
hopefully
good.
it would be
Final
before-
version for comment or?
I think I guess it would be still for comment because what has been produced to this point has been the work of the working group. And so once that's all assembled, it will be sort of provided to everybody for further comment and, corrections, changes that need to be made. And then it would be
Good.
ready for prime time.
Excellent.
Good.
And then it's up to the actual planning board to decide what they wanted or not. It's my understanding. That the working group is basically making the suggestions of how they want it to read. And then it will go to the planning board, and then the planning board will decide if they agree with it or not, and hopefully they do. And if they do, then they
Well,
will
no,
vote.
there were two members of the planning board that were on the working group. So pretty much everybody has seen, the language, maybe not all together, but in chunks. So my understanding would be that this would be sort of a final assemblage of the language as it has been worked out.
All right. Anything else for board discussion? Management of abutter participation for Zoom hearings? Nothing new? Board
No,
updates? Or go ahead, Bob.
I have a question. I just don't know if we can discuss it here or not, but there's a project that's before us in I just don't know if there's work being done or not. Noreen, I went to a site visit and there was some excavators on site. Is that anything we can discuss here, or is that something that you would just follow up on?
So I am following up on it, but just so that you know, where there's a proposed development, there is some site exploration taking place. Test pits. You have a site coming up that is going to be staked so that you can see what the proposed layout will look like, etc. So I'm advised that that's what that's related to.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for board updates?
I'm happy to announce that you guys are getting a brief vacation with 3 weeks off.
We sure are.
And well-deserved.
Well deserved, everyone, and Noreen and Ashley as well.
Right. Especially them.
Especially them, absolutely.
Especially all of us. Yes, Ashley has done a fabulous job. I give her a standing O.
She sure has. All those emails and running around town, dropping off plans to us.
You better clap, Scott.
All right, anything else? All right, we're gonna have a long recess. See everyone August 20th.
Great, thanks.
In the
meeting
meanwhile,
is
we'll
over.
have a good night.